visit our guest, Joe Carella, at www.slcenter.org/book to learn more about his inspiring work and book and creating unlimited options for aging, the path forward. That's the title of the book. And welcome back. Joe, you were going to tell us how you created this, your first community and what it was like for the people that first saw it.
Well, when I came back from Scandinavia, we had the principals, and we decided that we were going to build a Scandinavian Living Center. We were going to keep the housing small, 40 apartments. 50% of the structure is common space. Now, the first, people ask, so what were your roadblocks? Everybody, the Americans were my roadblocks. The architects, when I would say 100% handicap accessible, they'd push back and say, well, ADL is only 5%, we'll give you 10%. When I said I was going to put washer dryers in all the apartments, the washer dryer hookups, they said nobody does that. You're crazy. Nobody does that in assisted living. And then when I said I was doing 50% common space, because I knew what we were doing. I was very lucky because I had a board of directors made up of Scandinavians, and they would say, of course, Joe, this is a good idea. We need to do this. Mm-hmm. The banks would say, that's nuts. You need to put more housing. We opened up the design of the buildings. We have 2 floors of indoor track. People can come and open their doors, see nature, but they can walk in a circular motion and do 13 times around as a mile. So we built all this. We built this beautiful building. Residents from the old Swedish home moved in, and the community came in. Then I knew that we needed to bring in the clubs because we were only 40 apartments. I said, okay, the way we're going to do it is build up all the clubs, bring the Scandinavian library in. We're going to develop a cultural center. And we're going to allow all these different organizations. Initially, it was like, let's get the Scandinavian groups in here because it was a very small group in the Boston area. So one of the first stories, and this is a learning thing because I thought the residents just got it. We had the Newton Recreation had a needed space for their card playing group. It was about 50 people. And I said, this is exactly what we need because we're too small to have clubs. I had visited a place in Norway the very last day of my first research trip, and I was amazed with the connection to their neighbor. They had, many, many different clubs, and on a good day, they actually had 1,000 visitors coming to this place, and the community and city and town embraced this building as theirs. So I thought we're going to have a card-playing group. The residents are going to go in there and play with their friends and neighbors, and the residents looked at me and said, we're not doing that. That's the outside community. And
wow.
That's the obstacle because in their thinking, and most Americans, they've been visiting loved ones for decades in these facilities that are isolating, institutional. Immediately they feel once you move in, you're segregated. And no one should ever be segregated. No population, no age group. It doesn't make sense because we need the human connection at all ages.
Yes.
So that occurred. And it took, I remember it took about 6 months to get them to go into our big Nordic hall with their neighbors. But we started playing cards with them on the very same day in a different room. And I remember I would join them and beat them. I was a horrific, obnoxious winner. I wouldn't let them beat me. And a staff person said to me, Joe, you got to let them win. I said, no, they're playing cards. I'm going to beat them. But I was a very humble loser. I mean, when I lost occasionally. But what changed was the residents said, let's throw money on the table, just like everybody else in the Nordic Hall. I said, absolutely. And the staff said to me, no, you can't take their money. I said, you're going to play this game. If you put money on the table, not only are you going to win, you're going to take the money. I said, well, don't treat them differently. So we started to play. And I swear I had a group of 12 people. I had one person hard of hearing, other people a little visually impaired, some people who couldn't focus. For whatever reason, as soon as we put the money on the table, the person that couldn't see that well had laser vision. The person who couldn't hear could hear perfect, and they basically took my money. I lost my shirt and never won again. So once they got that confidence, once that came back, it was a matter of weeks before we got them into the Nordic Hall, playing in a separate table with their neighbors, and eventually they all mingled. And they got it. I remember being in the hall, looking out the windows, seeing a house 20 feet away. And I had this crazy thought. I said, my goodness, I can take a rock and throw it from here and hit their window. But they're the outside community. It was just a crazy thought. And some of these people playing cards were friends of the residents.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first breakdown. It was like the obstacle that we had to hit. And then, of course, the other thing is you have the people that think it's a marketing concept. And it wasn't. One of the mistakes I think I did was we built this beautiful building, and I was so excited about building it that I didn't take time to educate the city and town and the community. To them, community-centered living was just another clever way to market a facility.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to them is successful, and this is crazy to an industry, successful marketing of community-centered living is when people come to your place and have no idea that you're in assisted living because they don't care. It's actually none of their business. They're coming there to connect to some event. And that's the key for community-centered living. It's just about bringing people together, not showing off a building. It's about gathering the community, all ages. Now, we had PT. They saw our fitness center. We had a great fitness center. We don't have one or two pieces of equipment. We have an entire room filled with equipment. Outpatient company came in, saw it, and says, look, we'd like to put an outpatient PT here. In the very early weeks of them opening up to the community, a mother came with her young teenage son and saw what they were doing, and she said, I don't think this is good for my son to be in an assisted living. So she pulled him out of the program. Another mother came with her son, and she had concerns, but she was wise enough to say, let me just see what happens. Within a week, it was a moot point because he was having drinks with the residents in our cafe, having natural conversations. It wasn't forced. It just occurred. And today, we have all ages coming, working out next to the residents who go into the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. The physical therapist has said to me, when he has a client in there, it doesn't matter if they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, or even a teenager, he goes, when they're in there and the residents are working out on the machines, he goes, it inspires them to work harder because they're embarrassed if they can't keep up. That human connection, the elders help the people working out. They inspire each other. I had another organization in the beginning called Newton at Home, wonderful village organization. If you're familiar with the village movement, their goal is to keep people at home. Keep them in the community, and everybody volunteers to keep them safe. They help each other out. Now, they wanted to come and set up their headquarters in our facility, and people came to me and said, Joe, their mission is to keep people out of the Scandinavian Living Center, keep them out of assisted livings and nursing homes. And my answer was, well, that's great because we never have just one answer. It's all of us working together. We have Newton at Home, the village movement. That's a great thing. Home health care, great. Nursing homes, fantastic. Assisted living is built not to replace nursing homes, but to be something different. Everyone has to work together. So I didn't see this coming, but we had Cleo, who at the time was 101. She lived to be 106. She was a firecracker. She moved in at 98. She saw an opportunity. Newton at Home needed volunteers to help them out. Cleo, living in an assisted living, got a job with Newton at Home, and her job was to contact people on the phone who were shut-in elders living in the city. So she had this gentleman, 87-year-old. He was living by himself, isolated from everybody, but Cleo would be calling him every day, checking on him. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Now step back and think about it. Someone living in assisted living, could be any housing place, reaching out in the city saying, how can I help you? It changed
so there's no boundaries. And
there's no boundary.
It's
not about
literally the door is almost ever evolving, always open, welcoming. I love the effect of camaraderie and fellowship and interaction that isn't necessarily like the strive. It is the actual outcome, the natural occurring evolution of how this all works. So that's kind of the beauty of it, is that it just exists.
I've had great, unbelievable connections that I never saw coming. We have had a neighbor coming to our pop-up cafe on Saturdays. And I remember being in the center on a Saturday. I had no idea why I was there, but I saw her and I said, "What are you doing here?" What a crazy question to ask someone coming into your place. "What are you doing here?" And she said to me, "I'm meeting a friend. I want to have coffee with them." And what was happening is she had a choice to go down the street to a coffee place or a diner. Instead, she picked an assisted living. I mean, she doesn't even probably look at it as an assisted living, to get together with a friend and have coffee. That's what happens. Our cultural center, when I was hiring the cultural director, I remember that they were asking me, what kind of programming? I said, "Well, I want quality programming." And she goes, "What about the residents?" I said, "Well, I don't want you to think about the residents. I want you to give us quality programming that the best of Scandinavia, introduce it to Boston, and do not think about the residents. Think about the entire community. I want you to think about the community, forget about the residents." And what I didn't tell her, the residents are part of the entire community. But I allowed her to stop putting the Disney gloves on or trying to protect residents, because they don't need to be protected that way. They want to see quality programming without any limitations.
Well, that's the problem, is aging seems to bring the sense of irrelevance, because there is this, be it as it may, not necessarily on purpose, there is this shunning or this, them and that and not an us mentality. And care environments have such a stigmatized idea or concept surrounding them. So when you've kind of taken all the barriers down and you've made what is mostly thought of as separate entities a whole, defined obviously as community, that it's inviting for everyone. It's a place of just such wonderful gathering. So, I mean, I think that it changes everybody. It changes the community, and it changes the stigmatized stereotype, and it also changes the residents for just well celebrated living.
Holly, the impact on the city has been amazing over the years. I found out recently, about a year or so ago, a developer came in to build an assisted living. This is what community-centered living does. Change does not occur unless you observe something good or something bad, like I did. Change never occurs unless you're given the opportunity to observe. It's observational wisdom that develops. Well, this developer comes in and says, "I'm going to build an assisted living," and he started getting all these questions from the neighbors. Are you going to have a common space? Are you going to have a place for the community to come together? The politicians, are you going to give us more space for the community? The developer didn't know them. Finally, they said to me, "You're going to be like the Scandinavian Living Center." I found this out 2 weeks after the fact. I had no idea that we were impacting the city. So much so that today I recently found out from a letter from the mayor, as a letter of support for something we're doing, that the city of Newton, the entire city, is one of the largest cities in Massachusetts. They're changing the way they do things because of the Scandinavian Living Center. Their senior center is becoming a community center for active living for everybody. It's amazing, because once you're exposed to it, it becomes the new expectation. Industry will never change. Industry is taught to react. So they need to react to the consumers. They're the future demand. And at the end of the day, someday you or I may need to go to a nursing home. And I hope that we say to our families, "I want to go to the nursing home because my friends are gathering there. I'll always see them every day." That's what community-centered living does. And then the nursing home or an assisted living, they need to renovate. They need to be better. They have to get rid of the shared units. They have to create a residential setting. Our cities and towns, we build wonderful schools for the children, because we have to educate the children. That's the foundation of our future. But what we need to do is circle back to the future, because these children, grow up, they have these great experiences, they have all this wisdom, and then we ignore them. I say bring them back to the children. Create whatever gathering place you can. All these housing units throughout the country, let the children pass through because the teachers are great.
Oh, I totally agree.
Experienced elders, older adults, it's better because it's natural. It's like you learn so much.
Well, it's like family again. It's just on a larger scale. What is your vision for community-centered living? You've shared some of it, but what is your set mission at this point in your career?
I want community-centered living to be embraced by every city and town in this country, but all throughout. But I want the cities and towns to take responsibility to help the developers, the nonprofit organizations, or any organization that run these places, not just complain about it. Help them change, because at the end of the day, we may need to move into these places, and we need to make all these places a place to gather. And when you have 2,000 sets of eyes like we do, over 2,000, you're on your toes. Our building can't get better. We can't make it better because it's like we have to make it better. It's not for the residents, it's for the entire community because they're watching us. Can you imagine having cities and states not worrying about the over-regulating, but focusing on how do we bring people to these places? Let the community watch over the facility. That's my vision for change. You can't force nursing homes. You can't blow up the nursing home industry, but you can help them change one facility at a time.
Wow. Very interesting. And I'm so glad that you've, not only created this wonderful book, and that's Creating Unlimited Options for Aging, The Path Forward, but you've brought everything that you've learned from those early inspirations into fruition and created just a magnificent reality of aging gratefully for the lives that you touch, way beyond the people that choose to live there. And so, and I think it's so educational when people from the community come in. They have a sense of ownership that this is part of me too, and that this matters, and the connections and everything else, just fantastic. We're nearing the end of the show, and I just want to ask you in summary, what final points would you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I thought about the question about aging gratefully. I love that expression. And I'm glad you don't say aging gracefully, because I could never do that. But I think, and I thought about that because I knew I was going to be talking to you, and I said, what does it mean to age gratefully? And I remember, and Holly, I actually did this. It sounds over the top, but this really happened. My 5-year-old son was starting kindergarten. He's now over 21. He's graduating from college soon. And I remember I felt like I had to give him a message every day, because I knew that his journey is never going to be a straight line. It was going to be zigzag. He was going to meet people. He was going to meet good and bad. That's what human connections is all about. It's not perfect, but it was going to happen. So I did this. I told him, and I did this every day, every single school day for 13 years. He heard me say to him every day until he graduated from high school. Even when he was old enough to run out of the house and avoid me, I would tell him. So he got this message every day. Conquer your lows, capture your highs, always be kind, and find your funny bone. Now, I use that as those tools are for me to get through life, and I wanted to make sure he had it. And on that very first day, he looked up and says, "Hey, Daddy, what does conquer mean?" And then I knew that I had 13 years of educating him. And all I meant was, Matt, conquer those obstacles that come into your life. Don't walk away from them. Don't avoid heartbreak. Those things, I didn't say heartbreak to a 5-year-old, but it's those things in life that happen to us. And you can't ignore it. You have to overcome it. You have to basically power through. Because when you conquer the lows, they can become opportunities to make you a better person. And I would say to him, Matt, you have to capture those opportunities because they sometimes come into your life for a split second. Grab it and move forward with it. But I told him the only regrets, and this is what we have going through our life, human connection is important, but you have a responsibility for your human connections, because you need to be. Only regrets in life is if you're not kind to yourself or the people around you. If you quit, you're not being kind to yourself. If you say something, you're mean to someone, or you become an obstacle for someone, those are the only regrets you will have. Not because you didn't achieve a goal, or you didn't conquer a low, or you missed an opportunity. Not being kind to the people you connect with. And then I would say to him, Matt, just find your funny bone, laugh every day, because you can laugh every day. Every day there's something funny to laugh about. People laugh at funerals. So if you can't laugh, make someone else laugh. I gave him those tools, and I promise you, you'll age gratefully if you just embrace that. So I would say that, and take that, and don't be afraid of human connection, and make it happen. Don't separate our residents or any age group because you think it's a good idea. We have to go from sheltering and protecting, which is important, but we have to connect. Because you can have sheltering and you can have protection, but you're going to have isolation if the neighborhood is not there. That to me is important.
I think that's also beautifully articulated, and I imagine that the Joe Carella motto and wisdom you shared with your son, he'll probably pass that to his kids one day. You obviously have just such a big heart, and you know how to have fun. And so I love that you bring that into the work that you do, and I'm sure that's extremely contagious and also infectious. You've made great change and a positive impact on just so many lives. I loved hearing more about this. I think it's important to note that, someone at different ages in your life, you think of old age as being old. The younger somebody is, somebody 50 may be old. And then as you grow older, maybe it's somebody 70, and then maybe it's someone 100. And I hate the stigma of, these chronological identifiers of age, because what's so important to point out is that someone 100 and your cute little, just amazing lady that was reaching out to the members of the community that really needed somebody to hold their hand each day and to check in with them. Here she was at 105, 107. I promise you, and you know this, she felt 40, 50. The age is irrelevant, because the soul and the person that we are is never that age. And for that reason, there should be no boundaries, because we are all our young version of ourselves. And that's timeless, and that exists. So anyway, I think you've shared how you age gratefully, beautifully. Is there anything else that you want to say on that point?
I just think the industry and people in general should not be afraid to connect with other humans. And you can't control it. You have to let it happen. And when people start to do this, I promise you, we will stop talking about terrible nursing homes, and we will start saying, I can't wait to go. I hope I have an opportunity to live in that nursing home, that assisted living. That's the magic of community-centered living.
And that's great. And that's definitely something to strive for and try to create, and definitely be an ambassador of change, which you are. So thank you so much. This show will reach a lot of people, and I'm very delighted to have been able to share your work. If people want to know more, that's at slcenter.org, www.slcenter.org, and just put a /book on that to learn more about Joe's book, Creating Unlimited Options for Aging, The Path Forward. So delighted to have had you as a guest today. Thank you so much for being on the Aging Gratefully show.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
You're very welcome. You've been listening to Aging Gratefully. I'm your host, gerontologist Holly Kelly. Thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed our message, I invite you to subscribe and share it with others. May you remember to never act your age, and that age is just a number. And may you enjoy and embrace the coming week in the spirit of gratitude. Until we meet again, here's to living your best life now.
I used to think time was my enemy. My future wasn't looking good. So worried about the things I couldn't see. I couldn't see the things I could. I was aging fearfully, worrying my life away, when all along I should have been thankful for every day. Finally made a friend of time. Now you could say that I'm aging gratefully. Aging gratefully.